All right, is everyone ready? Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. It's been 6 months since the Prime Minister accepted the need to hold a grooming gangs inquiry. I believe that this issue needs a lot of political courage, which the government is currently lacking. Nothing has happened. 2 potential chairs have been rejected, survived documents that would be absolutely crucial for a national inquiry. I believe that the survivors deserve more. I believe that they need a judge-led inquiry, not someone from an institution that has failed survivors before. I have spoken to many survivors and advocates. Sitting at this table, we have parents, survivors, advocates. What they have in common is that they are brave enough to be on this panel today, but also have been willing to waive their anonymity. They have told me that they are losing hope with this inquiry. I don't want that to happen. I want to give them hope. For years, they've had to endure unspeakable abuse. They were let down by countless people and institutions who were meant to protect them. Survivors have been consistently let down. They need politicians now to show courage to stand with them. This press conference today is not about me or about any political party. It is about giving a voice to those people who have been voiceless, those people who need to be heard. We want to work cross-party with anyone who wants to see an inquiry done. We want to help the government to deliver this. But the inquiry and its terms of reference should not be written behind closed doors. They should be written by survivors who know what happened and who know what needs to be looked at. That is why today we are presenting a terms of reference that is based on what the survivors have told us about what it must have, and which also, importantly, follows Baroness Casey's recommendations. I want to be clear that a national inquiry must leave no stone unturned. It must investigate councils, the police, and even the government if necessary. It must be time-limited, and it must consider the role of ethnicity, religion, and other cultural factors. Baroness Casey's own report admitted that many of these cases are committed by people of Asian and Pakistani ethnicities. Her own report said that those who downplay the ethnicity of perpetrators are continuing to let down society, local communities, and victims. We agree. As I said, I have spoken to many survivors. We are speaking on their behalf. Their lives and their families' lives have been turned upside down. So separate to this inquiry, the government must act now to ensure that they and their families are supported so they can heal. Whether that is a helpline or dedicated mental health officers, the government must act now and work with survivors, not against them. So I'm going to hand over now to Chris Philp, who's the Shadow Home Secretary, who has done a lot of work on this issue, and then I will be bringing in the survivors, advocates, and parents who are on the panel with us. Chris.
Thank you, Kemi. Well, look, it seems very clear now these rape gangs are the biggest child safeguarding scandal in our country's history. Young girls and some boys as young as just 10 years old were systematically gang raped and trafficked. And because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani heritage, those in authority, the police, local councils, who should have protected these vulnerable young people, actively covered up these terrible crimes because they were more concerned about being accused of being racist than they were about protecting young girls and young boys. And that is one of the most shameful episodes, I think, in our country's public protection history. So an inquiry is needed to get to the bottom of this, to get to the truth, and to hold accountable those people who covered up these appalling crimes. Now, we campaigned together with survivors and their families and advocates, like Keir, to have this inquiry. First of all, we were smeared as jumping on a far-right bandwagon, but eventually, faced with a vote in Parliament, the government eventually agreed in June of this year. But 6 months has now passed, and essentially no progress has been made. A lot of survivors have lost confidence in the government and this process. But rather than just complain from the sidelines, we would like to be constructive, we'd like to be positive, and so working with survivors, their families, and advocates, we've developed a terms of reference for this inquiry that is ready to go. It's detailed, it's specific, it's got the confidence of survivors, and the government, if they wanted to, could adopt it tomorrow. They could appoint a judge to chair this inquiry, and they could get on with it to at last uncover the truth. And the terms of reference we've set out, I think, are very clear. It sets a 2-year time limit on this inquiry. It can't drag on for years and years. We're clear this should be led by a judge, so it's impartial and that survivors can have confidence. It should specifically investigate the deliberate cover-up of these crimes perpetrated by police and councils, deliberately covered these things up. It should, as Kemi said, look at the ethnicity and the cultural background of the perpetrators. There is a lot of evidence showing the vast majority, were of Pakistani descent, and in some cases were deliberately targeting vulnerable young white girls. And it should also make sure it has the powers to compel witnesses to attend and force the production of documents. Just as recently as last year in Manchester, the local inquiry saw the chairs resigning because even as recently as 2024, public authorities were withholding vital evidence. Well, a statutory inquiry under the 2005 Act can compel the production of that evidence. And of course, it's vital that victims and survivors are given anonymity and protection as required. So these terms of reference, detailed, they're credible, they're comprehensive, they've got the confidence of survivors, and I hope the government will accept this in the spirit they're intended. I hope they adopt these terms of reference, appoint a judge, and get on with it, because by delaying as they have done, the government is simply perpetuating or allowing to be perpetuated the cover-up that for so long has happened. The time for covering this up is over. We need the truth, and those who covered these crimes up need to be held accountable.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm now going to bring in Fiona and then Marlon. Fiona is a survivor who has waived her anonymity. Thank you, Fiona.
I resigned from the survivor panel a few months ago over worries of not being listened to properly, over them already making decisions without actually listening to survivors' opinions and it feeling more like a box-ticking exercise. There was concerns over the scope being expanded and the inquiry not staying true to the actual issue. The issue is grooming gang survivors have been failed for decades now. To take the spotlight away from that issue is yet again failing survivors. The inquiry needs to stay laser focused and it needs to bring accountability and justice. There's also a real lack of support in place for these specific people who have been failed over and over again. We need to start rolling out support to start helping these survivors heal from what has gone on. This cannot wait until an inquiry is finished. It is so important to start fixing the effects that have been impacting people for decades and years. Their whole futures have been stripped away from them through failings when they were a child. I would really like to see the government start thinking about how they can start healing these people, supporting them and helping them move forward with their life while this inquiry is ongoing rather than waiting until the end. I would also encourage there to be no timescale on the amount on the period of time it looks at during the inquiry. I think it needs to follow where the evidence comes. Whoever comes forward, they need to be listened to. If they're a grooming gang survivor and they fit the criteria, no matter when it happened to them, it needs to be investigated so we can build up the full picture.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Marlon?
Hi. I guess from a parent of a survivor, this inquiry is once in a generation where we can actually make our children safe. So it has to be done properly. One of the things that I've been saying is, and I do request Labour do this, it needs to be cross-party. There's no political points. It needs to be cross-party, and we all need to work together. What the grooming gangs have done to my daughter, you know, she should be at university now, and she's not. She's quite unwell. She'll never, ever have the opportunities I had, and yourselves, it really needs to change. So this inquiry is paramount. The other concern that I do have with grooming, there's no legal definition around grooming. Labour needs to start with a very, very clear definition around this subject. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlon. I know it's very difficult, but thank you. I appreciate that. And now Teresa, who's also a parent.
Well, we just need things to move on, and we need openness and honesty in all this. And we just need all the excuses to stop and this move forward. Because like my son's no longer here, how many other victims/survivors are not here to see the justice? All the time it's being delayed, people are falling away. And we are losing confidence in our local councils and the government. You know, there's nothing, we're not getting nothing. It's just a standstill. And we feel that it's being denied. And they are moving away from the issues of who is committing these crimes. Because it is, at the end of the day, it's a crime.
Thank you, Teresa. And finally, Lucia, who is an advocate for survivors and victims who don't want to waive their anonymity.
Okay, the greatest harm this year it's not only been the lack of progress, it's been the impact of that delay on survivors. Every month, with no movement causes more re-traumatisation, sleepless nights, there's families under immense strain and survivors losing what little trust they had in the system. The lack of coordination at the highest levels has only deepened survivor suffering. As a survivor advocate, I wrote to the Home Secretary 4 weeks ago about the stalling of the Oldham inquiry. I still haven't received a reply. What we're seeing is a system from top to bottom where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Everyone is blaming someone else and no one is taking ownership and being proactive, or at least that's how it looks. If the government do deem themselves to be being proactive, then they're certainly not being transparent about it. And what is happening nationally right now is simply the Oldham situation on steroids. It's the same delays, the same lack of communication, involving more departments, more confusion, more delay and more damage to survivors who have already waited far too long. A national inquiry must examine the entire process that the journey of the survivor takes, from first disclosure of the crimes through to the courtroom and beyond. We know too many inconsistencies and mistreatments of survivors that happen along the way, and this terms of reference covers that, amongst many other areas of concerns that we've drawn on from first-hand experience. We're not here for more lessons learnt. We're here not to only look back, but to insist on looking forward, to ensure that the system takes care of forthcoming recommendations from the inquiry, and again, this terms of reference does see to that. Child sexual exploitation doesn't end when the abuse ends. It affects survivors, it affects their children, it affects their families, it affects their health and their relationships, and it affects entire communities. If this generational harm is ignored, the inquiry will miss the true scale of what this crime destroys. This is why we implore the government to take on this piece of work and work together in the name of our country, not tolerating the rape and grooming of our children.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to open up to questions from the media. The first question is Jason Farrell, Sky News.
You said in this. You just said that you didn't want to leave any stones unturned. And those words were used by Sajid Javid back in 2018 when he ordered what you're calling for, which was a review into the ethnicity of grooming gangs. That found, 2 years later, that most of the perpetrators of group-based sexual abuse were white. But it also found a lack of data. And at that point, Priti Patel said that you would, as your government, improve data gathering. Are you saying today that you actually failed in gathering data, improving the gathering of data, that that inquiry was a whitewash, and that you did leave stones unturned when you were in government.
What I'm saying is that despite a lot of work and a lot of effort, there is still more to be done. We are not in government anymore. Labour is in government. So we are asking them to do what we think needs to be done now. We had an inquiry. It took years. That was the ICSA inquiry. And that ended up having such a wide scope that it couldn't look into this issue, into the... If I may finish, it didn't look into this issue specifically. Widening the scope to all group-based child sexual abuse is not what we're talking about here. And it was because it was so widened that we didn't get to the nub of the issue. More and more has been done. We had a grooming gangs task force that found 550 perpetrators. Even I, who was, a minister in government, was learning and discovering the sheer scale of this. We didn't know everything we know now then. What I'm saying is that now we know what we know. What needs to be done here? Full national inquiry, looking at the failures of the state as well. That's something that hasn't really been covered. What did the councils do wrong? What did the police do wrong? Maybe what did the government do wrong? That's what we want to see. And all that's been happening is kicking this into the long grass, lots of meetings, messing the survivors about, and they are fed up. So I'm not here to build a time machine and go back in time to see what extra we could have done there. We did what we did what we thought was enough, more came out. What do the survivors need now? That's what we're here to talk about. Thank you. Romilly Weeks, ITV.
Thank you. You say this is about giving a voice to the voiceless, and clearly you have the backing of the survivors and the families who are here, and I really want to salute the courage that it takes to be here and to speak about this at all. But isn't part of the difficulty and the delicacy of this that not all survivors speak with one voice or want the same terms of reference for this inquiry? And also, if I may, on a second issue, Nigel Farage's election campaign is accused of falsifying expenses, which they deny. What should happen now?
So just on the second question, I think that the Electoral Commission should investigate if there is a case of election fraud and there's evidence, that's for the Electoral Commission to investigate. I'm not here to talk about Nigel Farage. I'm here to talk about the survivors and victims. And you are right, they don't all speak with one voice. But if people come to me and ask for help, then I will give them that help. And Fiona and Marlon can say more about where there are disagreements, but no one can deny that no national inquiry has happened, even though we've been calling for this for a year. Those are the facts. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think the vast majority of survivors want the same thing. There is slight differences between survivors, and everyone needs to be acknowledged and heard. I think that is extremely important. But besides that, the issue is the same. It was a systematic cover-up done by institutions that led to the mass rape and torture of children up and down this country that everyone turned a blind eye to. That's what we need to get to the bottom of, and even though everyone's experiences are slightly different and everyone's opinions are slightly different, that is what we need to get to the bottom of.
Thank you. Charlie Peters, GB News.
Thank you. Kemi Badenoch, you said, opening your remarks, that two potential chairs had been rejected. They actually withdrew, and at least one of them said that they had concerns about political point scoring and a lack of collaboration. Did the Conservatives reach out to any other parties before launching these terms of reference? And will you be engaging with other political parties to make this more of a collaborative effort, as Marlon West referred to just a moment ago?
Well, I'd be interested to know which other political parties have shown any interest in this issue. I haven't heard the Lib Dems come out and say anything except make disparaging remarks. Labour are the government, we are the opposition, so we're doing our job. Plaid, SNP, Greens, no, they're not interested. The only Reform MP who was interested got kicked out of the party, that was Rupert Lowe. But we don't have time to sit down and argue about which party should be doing what. We are the opposition. We are doing our job. Survivors have come to us. We will speak for them. These people have decided to waive their anonymity. I think that that is important not to forget. What we want to do now is work with anyone who is interested in seeing a full national inquiry done to these terms of references, making sure that we don't just look at perpetrators, a lot of work has been done there, but also at the failures of the state. What I'm really worried about is that right now there may still be some girls who are still suffering, who are being groomed, and because we haven't got to the bottom of it or worked out where the state is failing, nothing's going to happen to rescue them. I don't want to see that. I want to see this come to an end.
I would encourage any other party, though, that does want to be involved and work together with the Conservatives to reach out and for it to start becoming a collective where party politics is put aside and it's just the people that are representing this country all working together for the safety of children.
Thank you. Lucia?
From a local level in Oldham, from day one, I've always said there should be no colours with this. Political rosettes should be removed. I personally contacted Reform a few months ago after numerous emails I didn't get responses to, that I asked them if would they be interested in cross-party working to push this forward, and it all went very quiet. And the Conservatives have been genuinely the only party that have shown me as an advocate who shouldn't really have had to step into this space. And it's quite frightening to learn that there's a need for my role, and the support came from here.
We don't want this to be about party politics. We want this to be about getting justice for the victims. And the more people focus on, well, which party is doing what and why are you saying this, the less time is actually spent on the people whose voices need to be heard. Marlon.
Just going back to what Kemi said about girls being groomed now, I can guarantee girls are being groomed now. Being one of the leads for the independent inquiry for Rupert Lowe, I speak to people, survivors and families across the country, not just Wales and England, Scotland as well. This is still happening now, which is why it's paramount that Labour get a move on and start protecting these girls and boys.
Damien Grammaticus from BBC.
Hi, yes. So Damien Grammaticus from BBC. I mean, on that issue of the cross-party working, I mean, this is billed as a Conservative event, and I mean, everyone here is saying they want cross-party working. Why don't you sit back down behind closed doors and make these points and seek to work in a cross-party way? You could always later down the line say that wasn't delivered, but why don't you seek to work hand in hand like that rather than sort of pressure publicly?
Well, because we are the opposition. There's a lot of cross-party work going on. We have Conservatives working on Rupert Lowe's panel, for example, but I have to do I have to carry out my constitutional role. As I said, what I've heard from other parties is lots of sneering and smears, people talking about us jumping on a far-right bandwagon. I don't have time to engage in that. What I need to do with the time I have is make sure that we raise the awareness of this issue. Having a press conference like this means that those people in other parties can then see what we're doing and decide to work with us. But simply, waiting for them to come to us wanting to be collaborative, I think is not a great use of our time. What we have seen is that we called for a national inquiry. Labour said, no thanks. It was because of press conferences like this, us pushing it, that they decided to have a national inquiry. Now we saw them backtracking, saying, well, they couldn't find anyone to do the role, the whole fandango with Jess Phillips. So we're doing this again to make sure that people don't forget about this, that it doesn't get kicked into the long grass. So some of this does require political courage. People asking me to stop being a Conservative so that, this issue isn't a Conservative issue, or forgetting I'm a Conservative politician. That doesn't stop because of the issue. People who want to work with us will go to all other parties, but at the end of the day, we're the ones who've been responsive. If other people want to work with us, I think that's great, but this is not about me. This is the point I'm making. It's not about Chris. It is about the victims. Who is speaking out for them? Who is helping them? That's the key thing.
And just to add to that, I mean, we are being constructive here. We've proposed a detailed set of terms of reference. We've gone through them with the survivors, the advocates, the families. This shows it can be done. The government has had 6 months to do this, and they haven't done it. And by publishing this today, we're showing it can be done. And, I mean, we'd really like it if the government just adopted this and got on with it. So we are trying to be constructive and positive by publishing this document today.
Thank you. Martina Bett from The Sun.
If Labour refuses to adopt your terms of references, would a future Conservative government launch a separate statutory inquiry, even if it means reopening the entire issue? Would that be in your manifesto, for instance? And on your terms of reference, you mentioned religion. Do you think that mosques or community institutions should be required to cooperate with the inquiry if allegations arise that offenders acted in religious networks, for instance? And if the rest of the panel wants to answer that, that would be great.
Well, I think that having a statutory national inquiry means that wherever the evidence goes, people can be compelled to provide evidence. Whether it's mosques, whether it's state bodies, that's what's critical about it. And this is something that we care about. This is something that Conservatives have said we will do, irrespective of what other parties or the government does. But I don't want to wait that long. Every day that passes is a day that evidence disappears, that people work out what stories it is they're going to tell. We need something right now. Conservatives had an inquiry on this. So there's no reason for us to say that, to make promises. We did this, and all we found was that there was more to be looked at, more to be done. Every time we looked into this issue, more and more came out that showed that this needed specific focus rather than a general inquiry. And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that that happens. Does anyone want to add to what I've said?
I think that any religious institute or any single institute at all should be looked into if that's where the evidence leads. There shouldn't be any limits on where is investigated if there's evidence to suggest that they were complicit or covered it up.
Anyone else? Thank you. Charles Hymas from The Telegraph, please.
3 questions on a specific issue, which is to do with grooming gang members who've been prosecuted and have dual nationality. Obviously, there's a couple of Pakistan grooming gang members who have had their prosecutions and been stripped of their citizenship. Would you strip people who've got dual nationality of their citizenship if they are grooming gang members and convicted of that? Secondly, what would you do if a country refused to take them back, as Pakistan has? Would you introduce visa restrictions? And thirdly, there are reports coming out of Pakistan that Pakistan is prepared to offer up, or is offer them up in return for 2 political dissidents currently in the UK. Do you think we should hand over political dissidents?
Thank you very much. So I'll let Chris go into the detail on that, but just giving a high-level view, we cannot have people exploiting dual nationality to get away with facing justice. That's why at our party conference, we put out a borders plan, deport all foreign criminals. If we have stripped them of their nationality, they are foreign criminals. And we have also talked about using visa restrictions as a way to enforce a lot of these sanctions. Too many people are taking us for a ride. They're exploiting our system. They know how to work the loopholes, and we just need to be more on the ball in making sure that they don't get away with this. But Chris, do you want to
thank you,
on
Kemi.
that?
So Charles, yes, dual nationals should be stripped of their British citizenship and they should be deported with no exceptions. We don't want these people in our country. If they have citizenship of another country, then they should be deported and their British citizenship should be removed. No ifs, no buts, it should just happen. On your second point, if a country, whether it's Pakistan or anywhere else, refuses to take back their own nationals, either people who are here illegally in the first place or people convicted of criminal offences, then we should, as Kemi said, use visa sanctions to compel them to take back their own citizens and indeed look at suspending overseas aid. We as the United Kingdom take back our citizens if they're convicted of a criminal offence overseas. It is only reasonable to expect other countries to do the same thing. And we legislated, in fact, in government to create a power to use visa sanctions. And in cases like this, those should definitely be used. On your third question, no, I don't think the government should hand over dissidents as some kind of quid pro quo. If someone is likely to be politically persecuted, then it's reasonable that we provide them with protection. There shouldn't be some sort of horse trade. Countries like Pakistan should take back their own nationals where required, including if they've committed a criminal offence, without some kind of horse trade.
Thank you. Max Kendricks from The Times.
Thank you. You emphasise the need to appoint a judge to lead the inquiry. The government's line is they say that will slow it down because judge-led inquiries typically have to wait for all criminal investigations to conclude. Why do you not agree with that analysis?
Because it's not true. You can have a retired judge. You don't have to have an active judge. A judge is a judge. A retired judge doesn't suddenly lose all their skills. And you can have these things happen concurrently. When I was business secretary, I saw how people used the inquiry as a way to slow play giving out compensation to postmasters. So I looked into this issue at the time. It doesn't need to be this way. But that is why you set up the inquiry in such a way that it does not do that. That's why we've put out a very clear terms of reference, time limited, and so on. I think that this is an excuse that the government is giving. There are inquiries that do happen concurrently. There are inquiries that are led by a judge which don't take this amount of time.
And that's why our terms of reference in paragraph 15.3 specify a 2-year period.
Thank you. And finally, Natasha Clark from LBC.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all for doing this. To the victims and the survivors, we know, Fiona, for example, you left the government's panel. Have you had any engagement with them since then? Is there anything that they can bring you back onto the process? And that's a question for all of you as well. Is there anything that would bring you into that? And to Ms Badenoch, is there somebody in mind you've been talking to that you think might be able to command the confidence of these survivors? And finally, it's obviously been quite a tricky week for reform. We've seen a lot of defectors from your party. Would you welcome any of them back? Thank you.
No, they've not been in touch at all. There's been no contact, absolute radio silence. I think once an independent chair was assigned, if I had confidence in that chair, then I would re-engage, because my main focus is that this inquiry is needed, it is important, and I do want it to work. But until then, I do not want to have any engagement in it. I do feel quite disrespected by the way that I was treated publicly and the lack of attempts to try and rectify that.
My daughter still remains in the inquiry. So I think she had a couple of meetings last week. However, I do feel really strongly about this. I don't think there should be a panel of survivors. I think it's unfair, and I actually think it's cruel. They should be all seen individually, not as a group, because some of the survivors are a lot more quieter, and they're not getting the story across. And everyone
has a different experience.
Yeah, everyone has a different experience, but I do believe strongly they should have the opportunity to tell their story, and that's not happening. Yep. The other thing is, me being a mental health nurse, they need support, and they're not getting any kind of support while they're in that. And in some ways, it's really stressful, and then they're reliving their trauma with no support.
And this is one of the reasons why I left. It was not set up properly. It did not have survivors at the forefront. It did not think about all these things that we think about. And then if you voice them, and I know multiple survivors left on the panel that have stayed on, they also voiced these concerns internally over and over again, but nothing changed. And I know a lot of them are feeling very let down. I chose not to be involved further for the simple fact that I didn't think it was beneficial to myself at the time. I didn't think I would have come out of that good. I do commend the people that decided to stay on. That is their decision, and they're entitled to do so. And I just think it really does need addressing on how this panel worked and how it would continue to work, and also not limiting the people that are getting heard just because I speak up publicly. I've been very public for a long time, but there's people that deserve to have their stories heard that are falling away into the background. There needs to be something put in place so they get listened to as well, and their opinions are taken on board. It can't just be centred around people that have been vocal. There's so many people across the country that have been through this.
Lucia, Teresa, did you want to add anything to that?
I feel that the people on the panel will be used as a scapegoat at the end of all this.
Yep.
That's what I feel. And that's why they've only cherry-picked, no offence, Fiona, the people who they want on the panel.
Well, they didn't want me on the panel.
No,
so.
no, they don't.
So, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, but Jess Phillips has cherry-picked her people who she wanted. Now, why couldn't parents be on that panel? Because we've lived it firsthand alongside our children. We've seen it, and we was able to do nothing about it. And we know as parents, you're out there to protect your children no matter what. So why weren't we allowed on that panel?
And I think that's a really good point. As a parent, we're the ones who are dealing with social services. We're the ones dealing with police, with the NHS, and being treated appallingly. And yet, none of the carers or parents are part of this inquiry. Nobody's approached me or any other parents that know.
Especially like with Teresa, whose son's not here to voice his own story. Why can't she represent him and his experience? It does seem very selective. And like I said, they didn't want me on there in the first place. The people that they wanted on were people that they already had relationships with, and I do think it is very selective, and that's not the way an inquiry should work. It needs to have opinions from all different perspectives. Closing it off to certain people then inadvertently selects a scope itself.
Lucia, did you want to come in?
Yeah, please. I think what the government would ultimately be doing with this panel is whatever good comes out of it, they'll take credit for, and whatever didn't turn out so well, they'll say, like, the survivors blew it up. And it's not even a healthy situation to bring these traumatised people together as well. I think, you know, you can find situations where they could be triggering each other, or they're not feeling confident enough to speak out, which is what Marlon was saying about some people being quieter than others. So I think a more individual, tailor-made process needs to be took on with this.
Thank you. The final point on that is, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, the survivor panels are being financed. And then I know my daughter will disagree with me on this. They shouldn't be financed to be on the panel.
Thank you. So, Natasha, you asked me if I had someone in mind to be a judge. No, I don't. It's just the criteria. We need people who give confidence to this process. It is clearly, as we have heard, very, very contentious. Not everyone will agree. It is complex. You asked the question about defectors and whether we would take them back. I think it's actually slightly relevant to what we're talking about today. There are a lot of people who go into politics for the wrong reasons, and they will jump to wherever they think is going to win. We had people, when Labour was doing well in the polls, we had 3 Conservative MPs defect. There are people who are going to defect to whoever they think is going to win. We in the Conservative Party are not doing this just for winning. We are doing it because we believe in something. And those who believe in that thing stay in the party. We want to deliver public service, not personal promotion. And why this is relevant to what's happening here is that it's actually very, very difficult to have people come out, waive their anonymity, say things that are not necessarily popular. I remember when people were talking about this and were dismissed as racist, they were sneered, and that wasn't just Conservative MPs, Labour MPs too. It is very, very hard to talk about this sort of stuff. So what we need is that the people who are going out there fighting for justice aren't then pilloried and attacked and their motivations constantly questioned. What we need is to give them space. I think it's a real shame that people have been just questioning Fiona and Marlon and what their motivation is. That is one of the reasons why people don't come out in the first place, because they're worried about how they will be treated. And the same thing goes for a lot of politicians too. It takes courage, and that's what we want to see. Let's have the courage to get this done, not about party politics, not about personal promotion. We have people here dealing with a very complex, very traumatic issue. They've waived their anonymity. What we want to see is the government back them and get this inquiry done to a specific terms of reference so that we can make sure that no child, now or in the future, ever has to deal with what the survivors dealt with over the last few decades.
I experienced some horrible stuff after resigning from the panel. Some of the abuse that I received was absolutely atrocious accusations that I was putting other people's party politics before my own abuse. And I did get a lot of abuse from that, and the problem is I went into this with the faith that this inquiry could be different. The government had an opportunity to do something that no one else has ever done. They could have brought justice to thousands of people. I worked with them from June until I resigned. I had concerns. I tried dealing with it with them. I voiced them repeatedly to Jess Phillips and to other people. I got nowhere. So then I ended up having to resign because that was the only path that I could see for myself. I didn't do this for any other reason than what my own belief were. And I just wanted to put that out there because it has been quite horrendous, the amount of abuse that I've got from people that are Labour supporters or Green supporters and stuff like that. I was quite shocked, actually, because I've always been quite an open book at working with anyone that will listen and will respect me. So I was quite disappointed yet again.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marlon, Teresa, and Lucia. And thank you all for being here to hear their side of the story. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, everyone.